to program of work on protected areas, codes of ethical conduct, strategic plan entry targets, etc. The Nagoya Protocol is in there, but it's not at the top because you'll see there are many other legal frameworks that came before it, that often governments have legal frameworks in place already that need to be accommodated when ABS comes into the picture. So again, coming back to this whole kind of legal landscape approach to things. Within Sabah, again, complex legal system. Sabah has jurisdiction over environmental issues. It's not up to the state of Malaysia. Land ordinance from the 1930s, so it's a bit old school. Forest enactment, parks enactment, biodiversity enactment, those are all long before ABS regulations are coming into place. So whenever the ABS regs are gazetted, which should be very, very soon, they should respond to some of the challenges, including the governance challenges, that are implicit in these other legal frameworks, especially the land ordinance. Again, coming back to this landscape approach. So I'll just share a little bit about a project that Natural Justice and local NGOs, as well as the Sabah Biodiversity Center, it's a key government agency in Sabah that's dealing with access and benefit sharing and biodiversity. So just to give some background, and what Barbara was saying before, even though the Nagoya Protocol was just adopted in 2010, access and benefit sharing as a thing has been happening for a number of years without legal certainty, without a legal backing. So for example, in Sabah, 1992 to 1998, there was a huge ethnobotany project. Gary Martin was involved in it, if anybody knows him. And it involved ethnobotanical research with 9 Dusun communities around Mount Kinabalu. So there's a map of Kinabalu Park, and you can see the shaded bits of the 9 communities. And just as an example, in Sayap here, one person collected 6,000 specimens, unique specimens, from his area, kind of thing. So it's just a massive, massive, massive diversity of plants as well as traditional knowledge. So this access happened. It was put into a database, and nothing really has happened from it. So that's a kind of example of 1990s style ABS. But some of the key findings, which all of you will know, they have very, very high levels of traditional knowledge. A lot of it is shared around the whole mountain. So you saw in that map, it was a representation from all around the mountain. It's shared. You don't have one community has only that knowledge. If you're accessing the knowledge from one community, you would have to then discuss with all of the communities who share that knowledge. Otherwise, you'd be excluding possibly some of the communities with rights to that knowledge. And it's not, traditional knowledge isn't an inherent thing. It's not a static thing either. So in order to sustain it, you have to have regular interaction and practical use within the territory that it was created, essentially. And it's rooted within the culture and the language. Okay, so I won't go through all these, but basically, even in the 1990s, the communities were calling on outsiders to recognize their rights to traditional knowledge and prior informed consent. And they were also calling on themselves to, again, kind of revitalize this practice and the maintenance of traditional knowledge. Okay, following from that, closer to when the ABS regulations were about to be gazetted, there was a project also run by Sabah Biodiversity Center, and that involved a kind of multi-stakeholder workshop on a lot of access and benefit sharing issues, so FPIC and traditional knowledge and so on, and also a legal review to identify potential opportunities for recognizing Indigenous peoples and community conserved territories and areas, ICCAs. So again, this kind of built on the other one and is a bit of a stepping stone for the one that we're now involved in. So we're framing this as a biocultural law project because we don't want it to just be seen in light of ABS. It's not just in light of protected areas. It's not just in light of biodiversity of Indigenous people's rights. It's at the nexus of all of those different legal frameworks, as I was showing in one of those earlier slides. It's the cycle. And so you need to be able to support all aspects of that cycle in order to sustain any one of them. So this is a notice from a village of Undutihan, and it's describing a customary law, or adat, to do with entry into their forest reserve. So just as an example, you have very, very strong customary law already exists, long before any ABS regulations will have come into place. So anyone who has come in the past to chat to the community about their traditional knowledge or genetic resources will have had to adhere to the customary law. So the communities that the project is working with, Bundutuhan, that one that I just showed you from the sign, and Milankab, 5 small ones. So generally, we'll be not going into so much detail on the technical side of actual ABS deals yet, because Sabah is just getting into this framework, and some of the government institutions, as well as the communities and the local organizations, need a little bit more time to get used to what this framework means before actually getting into concrete ABS deals. So we're focusing first and foremost on just capacity building and awareness raising about the links between ABS, customary use of natural resources, and traditional knowledge systems. Okay, so again, that kind of landscape approach to the law. And looking into how communities share their knowledge, how they share their practices, how they regulate their interactions with outsiders in customary law as a basis for defining how they'll do so under the new access and benefit sharing regulations. Okay, so we'll be working with the communities at the local level, be working with community-based organizations and NGOs on further developing concepts and methods for these kinds of things, including community protocols. Be working with researchers, so supporting them to understand this new legal obligation that they'll have, and also to engage in rights-based dialogues with communities. Supporting government to understand their obligations and responsibilities, and also feeding the community experiences into the law and policy-making process at the governmental level. And at the international level, such as this, hopefully contributing to development of good practice. So, just a few minutes on community protocols. Has anyone heard of community protocols? A couple people, a few people, good. Okay, so before they kind of showed up in the Nagoya Protocol, community protocols, generally, under customary law, are the community's terms and conditions about how to engage with each other within a community and how to engage with outsiders. Okay, so anybody comes up to your community, hundreds of years ago kind of thing, there's a set rule and procedure for how to engage with them. So the purpose in the context of ABS, as well as a number of other legal frameworks, is to support communities to think about their customary laws and procedures for engaging with outsiders, to clarify those, to identify procedures for free, prior, and informed consent, and for how they would want to engage with someone like a researcher or a government agency or a park official. Okay, so community protocols are kind of these interfaces between different legal systems. As I said before, you can have customary law, you can have Sharia law or other religious laws, and state law. You can have 3 or maybe even more types of legal systems that need to be dealt with here. Community protocols support communities to actually take ownership over the law. So they're not just the passive recipients of these kinds of legal frameworks, but you can actually have them identify for themselves their own rights under these laws and to clarify those to outsiders, so they're not just having to respond, but they can be a bit more proactive about things. So there's no template for a community protocol, but generally the ones that we've seen so far kind of set out, not necessarily in this order, but who the community is, their relationships with the land and territories, local values and visions for the future, processes for engaging with each other and with outsiders, local challenges as well as opportunities, their rights under different types of legal frameworks, and also to clarify to others how they want to engage with them and for what. So there are many examples related to access and benefit sharing from around the world. We won't go through them. Relevance in Nagoya Protocol. So there are quite a few different articles in the Nagoya Protocol that are relevant to community protocols. Not necessarily saying community protocol, but to some of the issues. So UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples is referenced in the preamble, so that should set the tone for the rest of the Nagoya Protocol. You have, in Article 6, you have reference to established rights in reference to access to genetic resources. So if you ask the state who has established rights, they may say one thing. If you ask the community who has established rights, they may say something else. So again, this kind of tension or balance between different legal systems needs to be taken into consideration. It's also referenced explicitly in Article 12 as well as in Article 21, community protocols, in terms of how they can support communities to identify who to engage with. Okay, so again, community protocols shouldn't interfere with other communities' protocols, so it shouldn't be used as another type of power grab kind of thing. There's a potential for standardization that we have to be careful of because, again, a community protocol developed by one indigenous community is necessarily unique. It's by that community, for that particular territory, for that particular way of life. It cannot be just cut and paste to another community. Okay? Overall, they've been quite useful for a number of different communities in different situations to communicate for themselves how they are helping conserve and sustainably use biodiversity and ecosystems, and how they'd like others to support them to continue to do so. It also helps clarify rights and responsibilities and provides legal certainty to governments and researchers. If you're interested in more information about community protocols, there's a website. It's just communityprotocols.org. We have some resources. There's a brochure here. There is IIED just put out a compilation of experiences from many different countries with community protocols. And we have a toolkit for community facilitators. And they're all on this website, if you'd like to see it there. So, some key points to remember, top 3 points. Just encouraging you to consider, when you're thinking about access and benefit sharing, including in protected areas, just think about taking an integrated approach to the law, okay? So think about the laws that are already there, particularly customary laws, as well as the existing state laws, such as protected areas, possibly forest issues, agriculture, and so on. And also, access and benefit sharing should, because it is a brand new framework, should build in some flexibility and allow some kind of creativity and innovation as well within this framework, so that states don't just, set in stone from the get-go, have to be able to innovate and adapt this type of legal system as we go. Second one, just being willing to address some overlaps and conflicts, particularly to do with land rights or unclear access and resource use rights, and also exploring some synergies. So, as Barbara was saying, maybe there may be some areas where protected areas laws or ABS laws can support the other one. ABS law, maybe you can use the provision related to FPIC to gain access to a protected area, or vice versa. So there's some things that can be considered there. And the third one, just kind of cross-cutting across all of this, would be managing expectations. I think especially with access and benefit sharing, it can be easy for communities to get excited about the possibility of monetary and non-monetary benefits. And if this doesn't happen in practice, it can be quite detrimental to the communities, depending on how it was introduced and so on. So just, if you are working with communities on these issues, to just make sure that it's introduced in a realistic way without raising expectations beyond what can be achieved in reality. And also setting out, there are different options out there and different ways that it can happen. That's it. Thanks for your time. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. And or not. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Holly, for that great presentation. Really enjoyed that. Which I think complements pretty well what I was trying to do before in terms of those other examples. It shows you a bit also the breadth of issues you need to consider to set up these systems, especially in the context of indigenous and local communities, in the context of protected areas, going from making sure you respect the rights at the local level and respect procedures and respect customary systems at the local level, up to then how do you engage with research institutions, how do you engage with the private sector to generate the benefits potentially. So it's really this whole world of different actors that congregate around this issue, and it's certainly not an easy task, I think, for the agencies and for the government institutions that want to set up these kind of systems. But it's also, I think, quite an opportunity, I think, to bring these kind of different worlds together and see how it can play out, and how actually ABS, as it was designed, can actually contribute to conservation and to the preservation of traditional knowledge, the preservation of the things that sustain both biological diversity and cultural diversity. So with that, I'd like to give the floor to you. I think we have about half an hour left for questions, comments, discussions, and feel free to address your questions to all four of us. When you do, I'm just going to pass the mic around. I think it's nicer than having everybody line up here.
Well, thank you very much for these explanations. Having listened carefully to this, my first thought is listens too good to become true. And
Excuse me. Sorry. Can you say who you are?
yeah, my name is Jens Ove Eckel, president of a conservation NGO based in Germany but working internationally with special focus on endangered species, which are not in the focus of many others. Anyway, maybe I can put it different. I hear the words, but I lack the belief, because I see too many possibilities for abuse in the context of so-called access and benefit sharing, especially with regard, or if we look back onto decades of technical aid to developing countries. I wonder what are the lessons which we have learned from the experience. I mean, it's a reality that billions of euro have been transferred into countries, and individuals in countries have put money in their pockets. Or the other thing which happened is we have invested a lot into a four-wheel drive automobile industry, and I wonder what mechanisms will be found that local communities would really get their share in this money, and how access and benefit sharing looks like. For instance, in Africa, we can see, if we look back in history, during colonial times, well, that was before the concept was invented, but we have now new access and benefit sharing. If you see how, let's say, China is taking its share in Africa nowadays, I wonder where government authorities in many of these countries take any care of interests of indigenous communities. I mean, if government authorities sell national parks so that fuel plants can be planted there, we are a long way from access and benefit sharing under this regime.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I'm going to take 3 or 4 questions and we'll answer them together.
Carlos Hernandez, I'm from Imbio, Costa Rica. You said that there's very little experience, and I would like to humbly share our experience. we've been in bioprospecting since 1991. Costa Rica has had a bioprospecting law since 1996. It's had an in situm and ex situm requirements since 2003 and 2007. We have a commission in Costa Rica that regulates and sees that this is enforced. 71% of the permits that are issued in Costa Rica are issued to INVIO. That's 159 permits as of last month. We have worked with over 20 private firms and over 20 institutions. So as far as inventory, as far as bioprospecting, you're welcome to our experience. We have had more than 120 countries visit us. People from more than 120 countries, and we have worked in more than 40 countries. So you're welcome to our experience.
Thank you. We're just going to put the number.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm called Simon. I'm now from Uganda. We just had an assessment of benefit sharing mechanisms around the Mount Elgon National Park in Uganda, and